Welcome to Rges Pre-Algebra. This is lesson 14A. We will be talking about two main topics, comparing sign numbers and adding sign numbers. When we get to adding sign numbers, you're going to be learning how to do it with looking at a number line or considering a number line, and then also how to do it mentally without a number line. So let's go ahead and get started. Background information would be our symbols. I want you to understand that this sign means greater than when we're reading from left to right. In other words, if I say 7 is greater than 5. And this symbol would mean less than. Again, reading from left to right. So I would say 3 is less than 9. Okay, so understand these symbols. And so now we want to learn how to compare numbers when we're considering negative numbers as well as just positive numbers. So if you look at a number line, the concept is fairly simple. Here I've plotted several numbers on a number line. Notice I have the 0 in the center. I have positive numbers to the right of the 0 and negative numbers to the left of 0. Now, I define a number as being greater than another number if it is positioned to the right on the number line. So the number to the right on the number line is always greater when we're comparing numbers. So we're going to compare several pairs of numbers here. First off, we're going to compare a 4 and a 3. There's my 4 on the number line. There's my 3 on the number line. And 4 is to the right of 3, so 4 is greater than 3. For the next set, we're going to look at 4 and 0. There's my 4. There's my 0, and we're starting with 4 because we're reading from left to right. Is left to the right, and if it of 0 is 4 to the right of 0 on the number line, and the answer is yes, so it is greater than. Let's compare 4 and negative 2. We identify our two numbers. There's 4, there's negative 2, and which one's to the right? The 4, so the 4 is greater than the negative 2. Looking again at another set of numbers, if I'm looking to compare 4 and negative 5, I identify where 4 is. I identify where negative 5 is. Which one's to the right? The 4, so 4 is greater than negative 5. Now let's look again. Next, we want to compare negative 2 and negative 5. There's a negative 2. There's a negative 5. Negative 2 is to the right of negative 5, so negative 2 is greater than negative 5. And finally, I want to compare again 0 and negative 2. There's 0, there's negative 2, 0 is to the right, and 0 is greater than negative 2. So that really is all there is to this idea of which is greater comparing two numbers, considering the number line. Now let me give you a few more for you to do. Okay, comparing these sets. Now, I would like you to just begin to think mentally. If this is 0, negative 8 would be somewhere like this, and negative 3 would be somewhere like this. So just kind of have a picture in your mind of where the two numbers are positioned on the number line. Negative 8 would be to the left of negative 3, so negative 8 is less than negative 3. Positioning again, I'm thinking 0 and I'm thinking 5. 0 would be to the left of 5. And positioning again, I'm thinking negative 5 and positive 2. And again, negative 5 is to the left of 2. So go ahead and do those problems. I'd like a quick review here on another idea. In addition to figure out some of your more complex problems in this section, I'd like to review the idea of absolute value. Recall absolute value is represented by two vertical lines longer than or higher than the expression or the number that you write in between it, and it represents the distance from 0 on the number line. So because it's distance, it will always be the positive counterpart. In other words, if the number itself is positive, the absolute value will be positive. If the number is 0, there will be no distance from 0 on the number line, so it would be 0. And if the number is negative, like -3, the absolute value would be the positive counterpart, or 3. So recall that as you're doing these comparisons. Now we're going to get to a new idea, and this new idea is going to be adding signed numbers. Adding signed numbers. First, we're going to add signed numbers with the help of a number line. Okay, to add signed numbers with a number line, we'll begin with the number line. My 3 rules are going to be, I'm going to begin at the first number, and I'm going to move from there to the right if I am adding a positive number, and I'm going to move from the original position to the left if I'm adding a negative number. So let's see how this would work. Let's say I'm adding +4 and +3. Well, you already know the answer to that. That's the same as adding a plus number is the same as the number itself. So that would be the same as adding 4 plus 3, which of course you know. But to use the number line, I would go over to the +4, and that would be my original position. And then I would move to the right 3 more positions. 1, 2, 3. To get, there's where I end, and that is 7. Now, of course, that would have been obvious to you, but let's look at what that would look like if I'm adding a -6 and a +4. So a -6 and a 4 or a +4. And what would I get there? So let's reverse back here on my work. I would begin with -6. Oops. Let's even those out a little bit. To -6 here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I would go in the positive direction, move to the right to add a positive. So I'm adding a positive, so I'd move to the right from that position. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'll end up here, which is at -2. All I have to do to figure out where it is to count my tacks, or ticks, okay? So -6 plus 4 is -2. Let's look at a couple more. How would I add these two numbers on a number line? Well, recall a +5 is just the same as 5. I could have written this just as easily like this. So I begin at +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where I'm starting. And then I am going to add a negative number, which is what I'm doing. I'm going to move to the left. From the position you start with, move to the left, 1, 2, 3. So I'm ending up here, and that is at +2, counting my tick marks. Let's try another one. Why don't you put this on pause and try this by yourself? And go ahead and unpause this once you have figured out the answer, and I will illustrate it for you. Here I would begin at -3. And then I would, because I'm adding a negative, I would move to the left 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ending up here. And what is that? If I count it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on the negative side of the 0, I've finished at -7. So let's do one more for you. What if you are adding +3 and -3? Again, I'm assuming that you would probably know how to do that, but convince yourself using the number line as your tool. Put it on pause a moment, and when you come back, we'll compare answers. Okay, so I will start with +3, and because I am adding a negative, I will move to the left 3 places. 1, 2, 3, and finish at 0. So hopefully that's very clear, and the next thing we're going to do is learn how to add positive and negative numbers together without a number line, only by thinking in our mind. But this visual here becomes a good background for being accurate with adding positive and negative numbers. Okay, the first one, we start with something you know how to do. And what you are doing in your mind is, of course, you know the answer, 12 plus 8 is 20. But how I'm thinking in my mind is I'm thinking of a number line. You'll find this useful until this becomes very clear to you. If I think of starting at 0, I'm going to go +12 and +8. So I'm going to move to the 12 in the right, move to the right because it's a positive number, move to the right again, and so I've moved over to the right in all 20 spots. On the next one, what I'm going to think about, if I start at 0, I'm going to move to the left 5 and move to the left 17. So altogether, I've moved to the left 17 plus 5, or 22 places, but I've moved to the left of 0. So my answer would be -22. And then the third time, what am I going to do? If I start at 0, I'm going to move to the left 4, move to the left because it's -9, and move to the left another 7. Because they're all negative, we'll move into the left each time. So altogether, I would have moved, 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 9 is 20 spots, but I'm going to end up on the left side of 0, so that would be -20. Now, let me summarize this. Whenever you have all the same sign, whether all positives or all negatives, all positive numbers or all negative numbers, how did I figure it? I took the sum of my movement, or I took the sum of the value represented, right? And then decide the sign. This is just one more way of looking at it. So again, here, if I have -3 plus -9, they're going in the same direction. So I take the sum. They have the same sign. They're going in the same direction. The sum of 9 and 3 is 12, and the sign would be negative. If I have 2 plus 11, they're both positive. They're the same sign that I'm adding. The sum of 11 and 2 is 13, and I decide the sign, which will be positive. negative 2 plus negative 3, the same sign. What is the sum of 2 and 3? They're going in the same direction, so I add 2 and 3 together, and I decide the sign. Negative 5 plus negative 4. They have the same sign. They're both negative. What is the sum of 5 and 4? 9. What should the sign be? Negative. And 5 plus a positive 7. They have the same sign, even though I don't put a positive in front. We know if there's no sign in front, it will be positive. And 5 and 7, their sum is 12, and of course your answer would be positive. Do I need to write this positive sign? No. A positive in front of the number is the same as the number by itself. We only need a negative in front of a number to indicate negative values. So that would be part of how we do this. Let's look at the other part on the next page. So now thinking these through on the number line, if I'm starting at 0, I'm going to go positive 8, and then in the other direction, 5. So what is the difference between 8 and 5? First I went to the positive side, 8, and then back, 5. And so I would have 3, and would it be a positive 3 or a negative 3? It would be a positive 3 because I end up to the right of 0. Now why would I know that it's a positive 3? Because I'm going in this direction more than I'm going in this direction. You see that? Let's do another one. So that's my answer. I'm going to start with 0. I'm going to go to the negative 8 and then back in the positive direction 4. So I've done this way 8 and this way 4. I have to take the difference between those two numbers. 8 minus 4 is 4. And where did I end up? On the negative side or the positive side? Well, in which direction did I move the furthest? I moved the furthest in the negative direction, and so this would be a negative 4. Illustrating again, and again, this is what I would like you to do. Not so much using a number line, but learning to think in this way. You're going to go positive 3 and back 2. Okay. Forward in the forward direction, 3, and in the negative direction, 2. So I'm going to end up at 1, and will it be positive or negative? Of course, you don't have to write a positive in front. You could just leave it. Now, how do I know? Because I'm going more in this direction than I am back. And finally, I'm going to go positive 17 and back 11. I'm going to end up in the positive direction because I've gone further in this direction. And where do I end up? At what point? Well, if I've gone forward 17 and backward 11, the difference between 17 and 11 is 6. Okay. Now I'd like to show you one more idea here. Let's summarize what I've learned in this part. What I've learned here now is that if the signs are different, that means one positive and one negative, doesn't matter which order. One positive number and one negative number. And I'm taking the sum, I'm adding them together, then the sum will be found, is the difference of the two values. I'm subtracting the difference of the two values, the absolute values, you could think of it that way. And then you decide the sign by which direction you move furthest, in the positive direction or the negative direction. Last concept, what if we have a whole series of numbers we're adding together? Some of them are positives and some of them are negatives. First, I would like you to sum all the ones with the same sign, because we're better adders than subtractors, generally speaking. We're more accurate. So sum all the numbers with the same sign. So all our positives together, which would be 8 plus 4 plus 5, that would be 9 plus 8 or 17. All our negatives together, which would be -5 and -6 or -11, and then combine. Now what I have, you don't have to rewrite it, but what you have now is a positive 17 plus a negative 11. The signs are different, so you take the difference. 17 minus 11 is 6, and decide the sign. I'm going furthest in the positive direction, so my answer will be positive 6. So that is the end of this lesson.